feel like we've democratized development, but we haven't necessarily democratized security.
A person that has never hacked before now can provision the AI model that has all the hacking knowledge in the world, and it's relentless. It's just, hacking at the cost of electricity.
Every employee vibe coding an app is effectively a new vendor. The whole departments may start to look like mini vendors that you need governance for. For a CISO that's listening and discovered, 40 new internal apps, what do they do about that?
I think it's a combination of platform capabilities, of good governance, and the guardrails we can establish for them. So a lot of enterprises realizing, well, we don't have other choice. We need to provide this technology to people we work with in a controlled manner.
How you try to implement it at Lovable, like what deserves a hard block versus what is a soft guardrail, for example?
That's $1 million question.
Thank you for joining the Resilient Cyber Show. My name is Chris Hughes, and today I'm joined by Igor Andriushchenko from Lovable. Igor, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I've been excited to chat with you. I've been chasing you down via LinkedIn, for a while now, but I finally got you here. But for folks that don't know you, don't follow you on, social media or any platforms or talks you've given and things like that, can you tell us a bit about yourself and the team?
Yeah, gladly. I think it's funny thing is I think I have your first message back in February or something, and we were like, yeah, we should talk. And now here we are, the August, the end of summer. Better late than never. To those who don't know me, and I think this are the most of you. I'm Igor Andriushchenko. I'm head of security and CISO at Lovable. I've been in the role for 1 year and 1 month roughly. And then, in the startup years, in the AI startup years, it's like eternity. So I've joined as a first security hire. So I've came to a very, very, kind of starting state of security. And I managed to build it from the ground up to 20 plus people. Now the team is 20 plus people. We cover all the areas from product security to GRC. We also run IT. We run platform safety. So we have a pretty diverse team, and that's because we have so many diverse challenges, right? But before jumping to this, rocket ship, the AI first company, I've spent 5 months at being CISO of Sana AI, acquired by Workday, another AI company more on the enterprise AI side. Before that, I was a CISO of a company called Telavox. Most of you don't know it, but it's European digital mobile telco operator, right? So there is a bit of like resilience and cyber and critical infrastructure there. So more than a couple of million subscribers across Europe. So it's kind of like this business mobile virtual operator where some really critical services were routed through it, like police, or I know some hospitals in some parts of Sweden were using it as their main mobile connection, right? And like things that run in ambulances. So I think that was pretty interesting. Before that, I did another telco gig, and before that, I was at Shopify in Montreal. I lived in Montreal in Quebec for 2.5 years, doing infrastructure security, leading a team on the infrastructure security side. And overall, my background is from engineering. I come up from what was called DevOps, right? I don't think anyone knows what it is anymore. Like we have only the youngsters in the audience, but back in the day, DevOps was young and cool. So builds, integrations, platform things, you name it. That was my thing, and then I switched to security. So and originally I'm from Ukraine, moved to Finland in 2013. So have
Very
seen
cool.
the world.
Yeah, you've been around and done quite a few things, and it's funny that I don't often feel old in this in the professional sense, but it's funny that DevOps is now kind of a dated thing. Like it shows you how quickly IT, software engineering, development, cybersecurity is evolving. And speaking of evolving, like I was looking into everyone's familiar with Lovable. I think most people are, and I know you guys had a massive Series C announcement recently. Insane valuation, incredible growth in terms of revenue and ARR, things like that. And I read that the team, I think, is expanding from several hundred folks to hundreds of more by the end of the year. And I was thinking, from the CISO's perspective, before we get into Lovable, the platform and the kind of vibe coding and all that, how do you think about that as a CISO internally in the enterprise of you guys are getting ready to onboard hundreds of more employees and staff, and that comes with an incredible amount of security concerns and considerations as well.
When I joined, we were around 40 people. Right now we are like we have 400 laptops in MDM system. That's the real count of things. So that includes contractors, that includes different types of workers. But again, like we're dealing with 400 entities, and we are not stopping our growth. So I will not tell you the end goal targets for like hiring and growth, or at least like open headcounts, but we are expanding massively. And within the year to grow almost 10x, right? Not like this is the 10x company. The famous 10x engineer is already a reality. People building with AI. Now we're a 10x company that you join it in one state, 1 year after it's 10x from its previous state. And I think we've been like 2 or 3 different companies on that way, because you join like early stage startup, right? Then suddenly you end up in like 100 people company, and that's I think where things start to break. And I think this is like there are some milestones to every company, and I think as a CISO we should always like acknowledge that we don't do our work in some kind of vacuum or like a theoretical space, right? It's always practical. It's always who are we protecting, what are we protecting against. And when you're like 40 people company, you have different types of adversaries compared to 400 and having all this massive announcement being on like all these front pages and so on. So overall, it's been a very wild ride. I think what helped a lot is, of course, one is understanding where the business is going, and we've seen the numbers, right? We've seen the numbers before anyone else. We could project that if we don't mess up, we will be in a year, we will be 10x company, right? So that's crazy, but it's also expected. So as a CISO, you just need to build your company, so build your security program to cater for probably 15x company, right? If you expect to be 10x, if you like add extra on top for extra resilience, then you'll be fine. Did we succeed at that? I think at some points, yes. At some points, I wish we did things differently. But I think one area where we grew more than 10x is hiring. So we went from 1 person to like, I think with all the offers sent out, we have like 25-ish now. So we grew almost like 25x. And I felt like at different stages of the growth, the growth doesn't go linearly, right? Let's say there is a sales motion, there is a new office opening, let's say in the US or in Europe, then you immediately get like plus 50 people suddenly. And then things start to break, right? So I did feel I had that feeling at some points in time where, I felt like, we're at our capacity, or like we are so overutilized that no weekend work, no like, 24/7 work, or like AI agents cannot help, and we kind of start falling behind. And I think, that's where 2 things need to happen. You need to still invest in hiring because, humans drive agents so far, not vice versa. So you need great people in the place. And then another thing is, of course, you need to reinvent yourself. You need to reinvent your team. You need to understand how you work with things, right? If you have too many requests around certain area, right? Let's figure out what the technology can help us with. And AI has been great helper in that, kind of trying to solve old problems, right? New problems for us, old problems for others probably, so that we don't break. And again, like necessity is the greatest driver of innovation. So I think we've been able to innovate internally around like, doing security reviews, running IT with very, very slim team. We had 1 person running our IT for almost a year, for instance. And, just trying to break the old stereotypes, like you don't need a team of 50 IAM experts to do certain things, but you do need key people in the key areas that know how to do their job really, really well, and also are open to the same notion of, okay, we are all beginners, right? We're all experts, but also we are beginners at this AI stage security. So let's be open. Let's not bring our old biases into the workspace, into the solution space. And let's try, some of the solutions, they can be extremely simple with AI, and they just drive a lot of value. So yeah, we just need to discover them, and magic happens.
Yeah, I love that framing. And so I was digging into some of your previous interviews and public, discussions you've done and things like that. And you had a conversation, I believe, earlier this year with the team at Wiz, I think it was, where you used this phrase, soft guardrails. And you made an argument basically that hard blocks, just create friction that AI-assisted workflows route around. And when I read that, it's funny you mentioned DevOps and reinventing ourselves and then learning new ways. Because like there's 2 kind of framings. One is soft boundaries or soft guardrails versus like hard boundaries with agents in terms of what they can or can't do in an environment and things like that. But also I thought of in the sense of DevOps and DevSecOps and things that I've worked on, like probably similar to you in CI/CD and all these kind of things. When we do implement, these hard blocks within development workflows and things like that, as you said, we just get worked around. Developers go around us. It proliferates shadow usage. They don't engage us. It's like we're almost to our own detriment in terms of security. I'm curious, like how you were thinking about that phrase when you used it, and then also how you try to implement it at Lovable. Like what deserves a hard block versus what is a soft guardrail, for example.
Yeah, that's a $1 million question, right? So I think it's the best solutions or the best kind of answers, because it all depends on what problem are we solving, right? If our developers are moving too fast or too slow, or are we breaking production with our AI agents, right? Those are different types of problems to solve. Of course, there is some sort of general AI adoption problem. With AI adoption, I mean, let's say you're an enterprise, you've heard a lot about how great AI is. You have friends who had managed to build 10x, 20x companies, all great, but now you need to bring AI into your workspace and workplace. How do you do that, right? You need inventory, you need visibility, you need some kind of guardrails, you need to start somewhere. So again, I think my first intuitive approach to this would be just clearly define what are we solving and for whom with AI. Right, and I think a lot of this, token maxing discussions and general the AI adoption driven by fear of missing out, FOMO, is just wrong from that perspective, right? It's not about who uses AI more. It's more like what value do you get out of it? And when looking at, internal usage of AI at Lovable, right, I could see numbers. Some people spend, I don't know, tens of thousands of dollars worth of tokens every month, and some spend just thousands or hundreds. And sometimes, those are all great people, right? And there's all great contributors. It's just such different ways of work. So, but again, I think AI just emphasizes the need for soft guardrails, because previously we lived in a very deterministic world, right? So you had static analysis. It was called static for a reason. There are rules. If something falls outside of the rules, it's not found. If the rules find it, there is some pattern matching. That was, we can argue whether it worked really well or not, but it was very deterministic, right? It's the same result all over again. So that was the age of hard guardrails, right? You cannot have an adaptive kind of policy that says, well, I can look at your intention and your job description and at what you're trying to achieve, and probably this is not what you want to do, right? This is how humans think, right? Let's say you have an intern and then you kind of onboard them into the system or into your work or their line of work, and then you just sit with them and then you tell them, okay, probably here you can use it differently, right? And that's where they become efficient. So I could see the soft guardrails being something like that. So literally babysitting your intern, where if there is some sort of AI LLM judge in place, if there is enough context to understand for what are we achieving? What is the person role? What is the person working towards? Or what are we expecting them to work towards? Or their agent, right? That could be also applicable to their agent. Then it's easier to identify what should we allow. And the list of allowed things, it's kind of endless in a way, because there are so many different ways to solve the problem. And we don't want to limit creativity, especially at places like Lovable, where everything that's built is built because of creativity, like those numbers, Series C. We don't care about them, honestly, that much. It's not the end goal, right? The end goal is empowering 99% to be able to build anything. And for reinventing that, for understanding how we can get there, it requires a lot of creativity. So if I just put hard guardrails saying, okay, nothing that's, outside of this 100 rules, we'll just miss out on a lot of speed. We'll miss out on a lot of opportunities, and great things just will not just happen. They will just, we will not even know they didn't happen. We will just see, okay, our quality of, product, or at least our numbers, in terms of customer satisfaction and product adoption, they not the same as before. And one of the reasons could be that, we put too many guardrails. We slow down the creativity, the execution speed too much, right? Again, we are all in the security domain, so we all think there is another part to this equation, right? How much risk do we accept? And this is, I think, where the soft guardrail concept works nicely with business risk approach. So as a business, you have your goals. Like our goal is clear. We want to enable 99%. How do we do it? That's secret, of course. We won't share like our internal roadmaps and everything, but still you can draw the line from there to your risks, like risks in your risk registry. And from there, you can identify what are the threats coming out of people running AI, right? You can understand that because of, like kind of how those business goals can be endangered by people running AI without any guardrails. And then you can be like, okay, what kind of behaviors do we want to promote? And you build soft guardrails around them. So, and I know I spoke to some founder yesterday in the space who are doing something like that, with the guardrails. You can build it yourself. It just, Claude or Cursor or Lovable, there are always these hooks. There are always ways to understand what AI is doing or prevent next command from executing. You can always send that data to your SIEM, to your intelligence systems. You put LLM Judge on top of it, and you provide a lot of context, and then you identify behavioral policies. But I do have the strong conviction that most of the guardrails will be soft guardrails very soon, but we still need hard guardrails as well. Because as we've seen with Hugging Face incident, with other incidents where AI agents they're super creative, right? So we take human creativity and we multiply it by agent creativity. And sometimes those things, this is where like agent doesn't have good enough judgment to not do something. And we need to understand that would be a great hard guardrail, meaning that this should never happen. But again, if we think about that picture with business goals, risks, threats, controls, the whole business risk management approach, what should never happen is already codified and coded somehow into your business risk approach, if it's done correctly, if it's done deeply enough. So this is what we were trying to do. We're trying to understand, like, given where we are going, what should AI never be able to do in order for us not to fail at where we are going? And some of those things would be never escape sandbox, and how would AI escape sandbox? And there's you need, of course, to do a lot of work with your security team, with your IT teams to understand those surfaces. But I think, again, thinking about trust, which trust boundaries should never be crossed, and iterating from there. So that would be absolutely, for instance, your product can have a very powerful CLI that allows very kind of admin level operation. So what happens if you let your AI agent run that CLI with developer credentials? Probably nothing good, right? So maybe some good hard guardrail is limiting destructive commands from CLI, or entire, kind of not letting AI to use CLI entirely, right? That would be a good example. And then relying on soft guardrails for more kind of open-ended, behavioralistic matching of what people should do versus what they shouldn't do to achieve those goals that you also make those guardrails aware of. So,
yeah, that's a lot to unpack there. You used a phrase that I wanted to kind of double down on, or kind of go a little deeper on. You talked about empowering the 99%. And we've heard this, talked about a lot lately with low code, no code, citizen development. I feel like everyone could be a builder, like these kind of phrases, right? With AI and agentic development tools, and I feel like we've democratized development, but we haven't necessarily democratized security, right? Because it's a specialized domain, and it's not widespread in the sense that everyone can just pick up a tool and do it like you can with kind of creating code in natural language now. And Lovable is in this unique situation where you have internal security considerations and things like you talked about of scaling the team and the program and things like that. But you're also like a platform provider for the community for that 99%. And it reminds me of the shared responsibility model of the days of past, in the cloud days, right? But it's this new paradigm for AI-driven development. How do you think of that shared responsibility model between Lovable as a platform in terms of your security configurations, requirements, baselines, et cetera, and then what is left to the community, the 99%, many of whom aren't developers by nature, or aren't definitely not security practitioners by nature? How do you think of that?
I think about it every day, not joking even. And what's interesting, I had this opportunity to see it evolving, right? So when I joined, when we were very limited as a development team, as a security team, we were trying to understand how can we empower 99%, because that has been the goal from the beginning. So when the product was driven by one person, when Anton and Fabian were starting to create it, right, two people got together, it was the goal back then. So at the beginning, we were like, okay, we provide people tools, we provide good tools, we provide good primitives, and people will figure it out, right? We tell them there is a security bug in your project, here is a nice button, click here to fix it. And then AI tries to fix it, right? What we learned is that very low percentage of people took advantage of that opportunity. And there were like many reasons to that. We ran various researches on that. One was that people were just scared to break something that works, right? Another was that they were unsure what this is all about. Kind of, oh, security is scary, security is complicated. So for people, it was, it wasn't the most obvious thing, and they what we were providing them, they not necessarily used those opportunities. So we realized that going kind of to really empower 99%, we need to be even more responsible for the outcomes, right? It's not about saying, like, putting a stamp on the app saying this app is unhackable, right? That's impossible. We know all that. On the secure system is one that is disconnected from any network, put in the Faraday cage. We're not going there. But again, like, we provide tools, but then there is an extra step to it. And I think it kind of the whole approach evolved around the final destination of this. Where are we all going with, how would security on a platform like Lovable would look like, let's say, in 12 months, right? And I have the strongest conviction that every security should be solved as a class of problems on Lovable apps. Why? Because we have opinionated stack, meaning that we know where the issues are coming from. We know the tech stack very well. AI is very much optimized to create certain types of apps, certain primitives, right? So we can provide it with a lot of secure building blocks, which we do today. Then we own, as you say, the full loop. So code generation, then we own deployment, we own runtime, we own full cycle of application. And this means that we can inject security at all levels. And we did this experiment. In June this year, we released a toggle in the settings saying auto-fix security issues, right? This is our first step towards that grand vision of security being commoditized, or like kind of taking out, like builders should not worry about it too much, meaning that the platform should do their best to solve it for them, right? However, how do we solve it, right? The biggest value is in asking right questions. So it should ask the builder, like, we took care of all the obvious bugs automatically. Now there are a few things we want to clarify with you. Do you need this table to be private or public, right? What are you building, right? Let's talk about that. And based on that, the AI can make pretty good decisions about the security model of the application. So essentially what we did, we shipped, like, there is behind the scenes, and like you can also find it in the UI, there is this, every application when being scanned, we build a security model of it. So essentially it's a threat model, right? So what is important, what can go wrong, and so on. And then based on that, we iterate, and then when scanners that we also keep developing find issues, if the toggle, auto-fix toggle is on, just issues are being taken care of. And since we own the full loop of development, we can, if something breaks, the agent can spot it and fix it before user notices, right? So essentially we can arrive at self-securing, self-healing software that pipe dream of many, because we are in the lucky spot to have all control of all the layers. And we also put that, I think we could have stopped earlier, right, in this journey. We could have said, developers, like builders, need to learn security. Here is the book, here is my docs, go learn or something. Ask your AI agent to fix, secure it for you, right? But again, I think there is some more societal responsibility. So if we give people a tool with so much power, with that comes quite some responsibility. So essentially, we are looking into solving security in these apps as a thing of its own, right? So ideally, there should be no security tab whatsoever in the app, and at least no security scan, because if something can be found, then AI should be able to immediately fix it, and then the code generated should be as secure as possible from default, from the get-go, and so on. So essentially, the people will be just presented with questions and business questions about their app. They will answer them, and then if we do it right, that the expectation of a person who's building and the result of the build by AI will be the same, right? And that's the end goal. Of course, it's hard to get there, and we're spending a lot of cycles thinking hard about it. But at least that's our conviction that it is possible. And as AI and LLMs improve, we get closer and closer there to improvement also of our harnesses and technology, but it is possible.
Yeah, you said several things that really resonated with me. Is like what you're describing to me sounds like one, like leveraging your opportunity as a platform provider to make a systemic impact to security across the ecosystem by things like secure defaults and making it, as you said, it's almost invisible to the user in many ways. Like good security, it rather than being a friction point, it should be almost invisible to the user. They don't necessarily, it's abstracted from them, at least to the extent that it's possible, right? And then the things you were describing, like it really felt like secure by default, secure by design, things that have been championed by like Google and CISA under Jen Easterly, like these kind of concepts of software vendors and platform providers, kind of making it invisible to the user and doing the right thing from the onset in terms of design and default configurations and things like that. But you also said something I want to ask a little bit about too is, obviously as a platform provider and what you all do with Lovable, you sit a little bit closer to the model layer than maybe some of the users in the community, especially non-technical users who don't kind of follow this so much. And there's been a lot of research on this from AppSec vendors, from academia, those kind of things that show that when it comes to the code that the models generate, it's still pretty mixed in terms like its quality and capability and functionality has seen great improvements, but security has kind of stayed somewhat relatively flat. And of course, it's a lot of reasons for that. It's trained on vast open source data sets that have vulnerabilities and flaws in it. Maybe the user didn't ask for the right thing in the right way with security context as part of the request to the agent or development tools. Do you think we'll see a place where the models get so good that it's producing, overwhelmingly secure code by default, and or you guys are able to do some of what you said, which is you're kind of fixing it on the fly for the user, so they don't even need to necessarily worry about it? How do you think about like models producing secure code, kind of implicitly on their own?
It is possible. That's my answer, right? It will be possible. We will see the day where the benchmarks will improve. I don't think we'll see 100%, or unless it will be kind of the models will reward hack the benchmarks and they will know what exact code to produce to get scored like very, very high scores, which they will absolutely do. But in the world where we add humans' creativity to the mix, so we don't know what the human will build, how they will do it, but we know for sure that they will be creative. I think defense in depth is one of my favorite concepts, and this is exactly what we should strive to build here. So essentially we have at the center, we have LLM, and LLM should generate reasonably secure code, right? Then we have the harness, we have security scanners, we have different tooling, and we have this loop between the user and the agent. So all of that together, it's absolutely possible to achieve secure software, right? So, of course, models can improve. I feel like if the models stop developing today, if there's no more improvements, that's it. Big ceiling. Nothing gets better. Only worse. I think we could still achieve it, but it would be quite a lot of engineering and fine tuning and doing specific things. But again, I do still think that models have got some improvement in them, maybe quite a lot. So that will help to make that core of that onion of defense in depth onion pretty strong. So whatever comes out is already secure to a large extent, very large extent. But still, I wouldn't rely on it as the only security layer in our offering, right? So with the scanners and the automation and everything else that we offer, including specific kind of fine tunes or harnesses or knowledge files for different types of issues, we can get pretty far. And again, but I think the last missing bit is that auto improvement loop, right? Where we finally make the agent to understand what human wants from them and understand how to get there securely, and actually look at all the existing findings so far, generation, starting from code generation to what the scanners found, and just take it into account and improve, get better, get good at security. So that is possible. But again, there needs to be that part and the dialogue between the creator, the builder, and the agent when some things are unclear.
Yeah, well said. I think it's funny how a lot has changed, of course, in AI and agentic AI and things like that, but fundamental concepts like defense in depth and things you just talked about are still alive and well and will always be alive and well, regardless of the technological changes. Like those fundamental concepts, or primitives as you call them earlier, I think are going to persist no matter what. And as I said, I dug in some of your previous interviews and things you've said, and I hope I'm not misquoting you here, but like what you all do, this capability you provide of that development for the 99%, it's amazing, but of course it has some implications for CISOs of organizations that find teams internally using these things. Like say that, you've said that every employee vibe coding an app is effectively a new vendor, and that whole departments may start to look like mini vendors that you need governance for. For a CISO that's listening and discovered 40 new internal apps a marketing team spun up with Lovable last quarter, for example, what do they do about that? How do they kind of govern and secure that democratized capability within their enterprise?
There is an answer to that, and I think it's a combination of platform capabilities, of good governance, and the guardrails we can establish for them. Because I made another point recently that if technology is out there, right? The genie is out of the box, out of the lamp. Things are happening. So what we see a lot, or like a lot of customers come to us saying we've seen people using Lovable under the hood, right? So we got tired of it. It's impossible to stop. Or like other tools, right? They can use the same way they can use any AI tool from their personal account. They can use it on their phone. They can sit at work. Okay, work does not allow using it, on their work computer, but they can do something on the phone, make a photo of the screen and then put it in Claude or ChatGPT or Lovable, build me a thing around it. And the intentions are mostly good, right? People are not malicious or malign, and they want to solve problems, they want to be creative, they want to build something. So a lot of enterprises realizing, we don't have other choice. We need to provide this technology to people we work with in the controlled manner. And it's all about what the platform offers, right? And then we've spun up a pretty big team now. We were joking like half of the Lovable has been working on enterprise security features now. But the idea is that we looked at everything that people need to use AI securely for building websites, slide decks, anything you can imagine, internally in the organizations, and potentially publishing it on the internet if they want to go there, right? And everything, the core to the approach has been kind of the gradual maturation of people and their AI usage, right? So you start with people just trying it out. By default, everything's super private. In Google Docs, when you create a document, no one sees it. You can write anything you want. Even your IT admin will not be able to see it. Then you can publish it. You can publish it to your org. So again, pretty limited surface. People can interact with it if you published it, right? You need to be mindful of that, but it becomes kind of an internal information or internal tool. And then, of course, you can, if your organization allows it, and that's another kind of governance control that is possible to set. If your organization allows it, you can publish it externally on the internet. Many don't. Many just want to play it safe. Let's say all the apps should be internal apps, which is their choice, right? At Lovable, we do not have that limitation, but we, of course, we also shipped a lot of functionality to monitor everything that's been published, right? Everything that's been built, and spot anything that should not be on the internet. Anything that, let's say, we have things like PII scanner, we have things like security scanner, and the combination of being on the internet with sensitive PII in it and security vulnerabilities, that's a bad combination, right? So we can prevent publishing with vulnerabilities. We can prevent publishing with PII. So you see, there's lots of controls, lots of like layers again in this defense and depth and this governance model, and I think we just need to trust it, and we need to trust the combination of, or like the total of an employee who's trying to do their job well, the AI as a technology that is helping them, and the platform that making sure it happens in the controlled manner. And yeah, I mean, we are doing, again, like we've spoke to great number of CISOs and CIOs about the same topic, and all they want is pretty much certain number of controls, and we're already getting much fewer requests than earlier, so it seems like things are working. And yeah, but I also could summarize it as, you know, everyone wants minimal attack surface, everyone wants secure by design, by default code, everyone wants minimal blast radius, so if this thing explodes, no one is hurt, and everyone wants a good visibility into what's happening. So audit logs, application logs, some sort of monitoring and alerting on top of that. And it's a pretty simple formula on the high level, but it gets tricky as we get to into the details. But again, for every organization, the answer is a bit different. But I think those are the main rules to follow.
Yeah, it's a good framing in the sense that it's simple, but not necessarily easy. The devil's in the details in terms of implementation and execution and things like that. Speaking of controls, the last couple of questions I wanted to ask you are a little bit in the vein of regulation, governance, risk, and compliance. One's internal, one's external. I'll start with the internal one. You all have some, again, you're building out your security team and capabilities pretty quickly. You have some folks in my network who I think have joined your team, and I think I've seen you and others speak about a concept of GRC engineering, which is, taking governance, risk, and compliance from maybe a paper-based, cumbersome, tedious activity that's not really technical to moving it to more of a engineering discipline. How do you think of that concept of GRC engineering in terms of how you build that internally at your organization at Lovable? Like, how do you guys approach governance, risk, and compliance from maybe from an engineering perspective?
Okay. Let me take 10 steps back. I know it will be a massive detour, but this was something that I've been thinking super hard for the past week. Well, not week, I mean months, but actually putting it in writing and just publishing the blog. But my biggest kind of, why do we exist? Why security teams needed? Because there are certain threats, there are certain risks out there that can endanger the organizational success, right? That's our goal, right? Not to be in the podcast or build something cool. No one cares, right? Like what we really are here, we're like risk reducers. And we need to get it right. We need to make sure we do not take too much unacceptable risk. We need to make sure we do, we integrate with how organization works and so on and so forth. But now here is a curveball coming our way very quick, or more like asteroid coming at Earth, and now we have to scramble and shoot it down before it hits us, right? The asteroid is the AI-powered attackers. AI-powered attackers are out there to get us all. You don't need to be some kind of guru to understand that, if you can tell AI, hack or just get some token from that system. And here's the system, which is black box. The AI, unless it has very good guardrails around it, their base model, it will go and try to invent all possible ways to get in, right? Then you can add a harness. Let's say you put LLM model and you have a good harness that is optimized for, red teaming. What happens then, right? So without much skill, you don't need to know how SSH works. You don't need to know how, binary reversing works. But you now have the superpowers. And let's say you have morals that allow you to attack other people's system for profit, right? For your own profit, for your own good, without asking people about that, right? Then what happens is just literally everyone out there becomes a big threat to a company. So AI-powered attackers with improvement of the models, with democratization of access, with open models like recent Quen model can already run on their pretty powerful gaming laptop, but still it's doable. And you just run from there. And it has, we already seen jailbroken Quen before that has no guardrails, it has no filter. sometimes there are people like that, now there is a model with no filter whatsoever, pretty scary. So it's all coming for all of us. And my main kind of realization from it was that the one thing that can save us is actually the good old defense in depth approach, but with the trick. Because previously, how does the defense in depth worked? And I promise this will end up with compliance, right? There is a compliance in them. So how does defense in depth work, right? You have these layers, and a lot of organizations, like at least like from my experience and talking to my colleagues, it was about like, okay, we have these controls, we have these tools in place, and we can kind of like slap a lot of controls on this layer, a lot of controls on this layer, and then like it would just slow down attackers so much that they will bog down in the defenses, we will detect them, we will eject them, right? So, but overall, like each layer's performance or quality or perfection of each layer has never been the end goal, because we felt it's enough, right? It's good enough. But now good enough has changed. So now good enough became, whoa, that person that has never hacked before now can provision the AI model that has all the hacking knowledge in the world, and it's relentless. It's just, hacking at the cost of electricity. That's essentially what we are looking at with advanced capabilities. So if there is a gap in that layer, it will find it. And then there is another layer, and if there is a gap in that layer, it will find it, and it will find it, and it will do it pretty quickly. So my realization was that, okay, we need pretty good layers. We need to measure, we need better controls, more intentional, with better coverage. So essentially what we need to build is that each layer should have close to like 99% or 95, 97, depends on like where you are, like who's your attacker, control efficiency. Meaning that if you have MFA, if you have EDR running on your laptops, right, those need to be everywhere. You cannot just like run it on just core employees or contractors but not that group, and so on, right? So we need to ensure that the controls really cover what they should, that we know where the gaps are, and we have a plan to address it, or some kind of mitigating control. And we need to be able to ensure, like, measure and validate the efficiency of each layer. So, and by doing that, we would enhance the layers, and we would make it harder. Again, it's all about kind of the bogging down the attackers in the layers, so that we can eject them when we realize, okay, somebody's out there for us at the machine speed. So how do we measure the control efficiency? GRC, right? That's what I was going to. So I think this change, like post-Mythos world, you name it, like there are different names to it, or like advanced adversarial AIs. GRC engineering will shine if done right, because then you can programmatically understand your layers. You can build like this graph of like what is where. If you look at your compliance software model, like that, it already has all the data, right? You have your risks, you have your vendors, you have your controls. If you can kind of put them all into that model and understand which layer is comprised of what controls and what is their efficiency like in real life, and what is still missing. So look for threats that are not addressed, right? Risks that are accepted with too high risk score. And ask yourself, is my layer actually holding? And ask your GRC engineering to build the eval, or like the nice modern word for that, or KPI, the old school word, but some validation score for each layer. And if you can get to the coverage, saying, okay, my coverage is 80%, great, get it to 85, then get it to 90 next month, they get it to 99, right? And the farther you go, the harder it gets. But overall, I think that's the GRC approach I see as helping companies, because I think GRC has been associated a lot with kind of, you build a team, you put it in the dark corner of the office, they do their job, you forget about them because they do their job good, which is great. It means they're great. They do their job good. Well, but now GRC takes a bit, they're like, hello, we're here, we can help. And they should help kind of put it all together. And again, I started with this business risk model, right? This is where everything is rooted in. So if we start thinking about the business risks, then GRC is the obvious first-class citizen in this ecosystem, because it has understanding of risks, of compliance, pretty much efficiency of our controls around mitigating those risks. So you already have all the ingredients on the table, but it's more like you need to intentionally build the controls that enhance every layer, measure every layer efficiency, and then make sure you have enough monitoring to spot this, AI-powered attacks and prevent them. So that's my answer about GRC, where it's all heading and where it exists in our world.
What I liked about the answer is, there's often been like this derogatory phrase where it's like compliance doesn't equal security. And like maybe that was the case in the past, but what you just described with GRC engineering or how you envision it, really it's like leveraging governance, risk, and compliance, not necessarily just for compliance, but show the efficiency and effectiveness of your security controls in near real time. And then, what better way to prove the value of security than to be able to do that and see how effective your controls are, what level of coverage you have, like you just talked about. So I think that's the direction that governance, risk, and compliance needs to move, not only to be better from the compliance perspective and things like that, to move it to more of an engineering discipline and tie it to the security engineering and activities of the organization too, and showing the effectiveness of your security investments and things that you're doing in the enterprise. So I like that answer a lot. Last question I wanted to ask you before we wrap up here is maybe tied to broader regulatory landscape. I know, of course, your organization has roots in the EU and things like that, but even here in the U.S. and abroad and other nations, there's a lot of evolution around regulations and software security and cyber and so on. When you look at Lovable, where you have this empowerment of the 99%, when you have regulations coming for software vendors or software manufacturers, as they may be called, how do you see that playing out from the regulatory perspective when it could just be a citizen developer who created some app and put it out there? They're not necessarily a quote unquote software vendor or software manufacturer, but they did produce software and put it out into the world, and maybe people touch it, or maybe it has an impact on someone's PII or PHI or financial data or whatever. Like how do you see that playing out in a regulatory sense now that everyone can maybe be a software manufacturer and or vendor?
Yeah, I think it resonates very well with the responsibility of the platform over different aspects of creation cycle, right? So for instance, internally, we do have a trust and safety department. We have policies of what's allowed, what's not. So for instance, some projects, like you can build a Microsoft login page, a lookalike, but you can only publish it internally, right? The moment if you decide to publish it externally, it may fail because of automated checks and so on. But we do not, we try not to limit too much what you can do internally on your in your small cave where you're experimenting. But the moment you put it into the bigger world, there are certain obligations. And our goal, our task is to make it very, very clear what it entails, right? And we want to do it, it's not yet in the product entirely, but we do have that vision of telling people early that, you're building this thing, consider that certain requirements will be put on you the moment you publish, right? So for instance, we can take some regulated space, right? Healthcare data or, selling medical drugs. We've had some cases where we had to just take down what people created because, we need to see the evidence of a license for it. We need now, creation is easy, right? But before it starts earning money, we were like, okay, sorry, you can only build it internally. And that's the current, there are some limitations. But again, we're looking to ease up the burden of regulations. And if we can ask those questions early enough, first of all, we can say, okay, if you want to build like a dark weapons marketplace, probably, we're not friends, right? Please don't even try. But then if you have a license, or you can apply for a license through us, or we can tell you where to apply, right? That resonates very well with our narrative of Lovable being a co-founder. And that's one of the pillars of the strategy, where it's as a co-founder with some experience, we tell you that this will require a license, right? You can go and apply it. Here's the phone number, here's a website, and people go apply, they get licensed. We do some sort of KYC on our end. Beautiful, everything works, right? That's one side of it. Another is what is not dependent on us. So, there is a Cyber Resilience Act, there is NIS2 in the EU, there is many EU AI Act. So they all put certain requirements, and sometimes, they're implicit, sometimes they're not very well known to creators. And what our goal is and always will be to make it known, right? So again, understand what people are building, tell them these are the things you need to be aware of, and explain their responsibility. Because in shared responsibility model, it's not only platform that has responsibility, right? It's a creator as well. And the moment they start putting real people data into their whatever they build, the moment they start to do certain actions, right, things can change very quickly for kind of what they need to comply with. So my advice has always been that, it's treating building process not as a one-way street where you put just requirements on the system saying build me this, but also asking questions, being curious, being like, based on what you've built so far, what you see in my app, based that I'm let's say in Germany, anything I should be aware of, any regulations, anything that I need to know, and how to minimize that risk coming out of it. So for instance, like you mentioned CRA, Cyber Resilience Act earlier when we talked, it has very clear requirements, right? Some reporting requirements, software bills of materials, yada, yada, yada. So most of it technically we can provide as a platform. We already do it. But then like reporting, let's say if there is a security incident in your app, that's your responsibility. So asking the agent to let you know what are your CRA responsibility, or like what are the regulatory framework based on where you operate and what you build, it will tell you, okay, CRA might be a thing because you distribute software. Let's say you build like some app or agent and you ship it to someone else. So it applies, let's say so. And then we can like the agent will tell you what you need to do. And it's not super scary. It's not crazy requirements. And I'm always trying to treat any regulations as some sort of, improvement function, or like at least they're there for a reason. So what are they trying to achieve? Okay, they're trying to mature the creators of software, which is not a bad thing. Of course, we as a platform, we provide some building blocks and ways for people to discover those requirements, and then we make it simpler. We don't completely kind of do it for them because they're still their responsibility, but we can make it simpler to discover those requirements and to build secure compliant software. And like recently we released for all the apps that want it, they can opt in to have their own trust center. So anything you build with us, you can build like automatically deploy a trust center that showcases your compliance posture, right? And then that will be the biggest platform for making sure meeting those regulatory demands going forward. So this is where, let's say, you achieve CRA compliance just by yourself as the creator. You can put it there as kind of the statement and make it more, your users will trust you more, especially, because you've done the job. And there is a place where kind of showcase it and do it automatically, because most of those requirements, they're just being automatically discovered and automatically generated based on the app and the data in the app. So it's a pretty cool concept. It's kind of like, automating compliance. Again, you mentioned GRC engineering. That's exactly what it's doing, but for customer apps, and simplifying that regulatory burden and regulatory overhead that people may have.
That's I gotta be honest, that was a really amazing answer, because I wasn't quite sure how you all approach that yet, but it goes back to, like, again, making security easy to do, or making it, I want to say, abstract from the user, because in this case, you're explicitly informing them of requirements they have to meet, or regulatory, things that may be applicable to them depending on the use case of their application and the data and so on. But you're at least bringing those things to the forefront of their attention, and then help enabling or empowering them how to meet those requirements. Because I've done a lot of work in compliance, like HIPAA, HITRUST, FedRAMP, SOC 2, like NIST, RMF, you name it, and it's like, it's complex. Like, there's entire cottage industries built around just each of these frameworks, of consultant agencies and auditors and assessors, et cetera. So it's really cool to hear you guys are doing that for the community, and like helping them understand how to navigate that, how to meet it, making it easier to meet these requirements. It sounds like a win-win, both from the compliance perspective of meeting the regulation, the compliance requirements as a platform provider, as in terms of meeting your responsibilities, and then also helping the users do it too. So that was a super cool answer. I'd love to hear how you guys are approaching that. But that takes us to the end of the interview. That's the questions I had for you today. I'm glad I finally got some time with you after chasing you down on LinkedIn for 6 months or so, or however long it's been. But thank you so much for joining me today, Igor. I really loved the conversation.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure. Thanks for interesting questions, really. And I think, like, if I can have, like, just
go
a few more things to say. I think overall vibe coding has it's a bit like a interesting space to be, because there's a lot of expectations, there is a lot of kind of baseline distrust, or can this be a thing? And I think as the community and builders and the platforms in the space, we should all treat each other with respect and with understanding that we're all in the same boat, right? So if tomorrow some of our competitors fail miserably, I'll tell you this: we will be impacted immediately, because people will ask questions. Oh, that happened to them. How are you sure it doesn't happen to you? And vice versa, right? So overall, I think there is some job in the community of vibe coders and vibe coding platforms to support the end goals, right? We all want to democratize the creation. We want to put human first. We want the humans, people who had no idea that they were able to build such beautiful things. They will have that opportunity. So we just need to bring it to them and hear them out, and build something that helps them. So I think that's our job, that's our mission, and we all should just huddle together and push towards that mission, because I think if we do it well, the world will change for better, and that's all that matters at the end of the day.
Yeah, no argument for me on that. And it's funny, earlier I said we had democratized development, but not democratized security. But as we went through this conversation, you laid out several examples of how you guys are trying to do exactly that, which was really cool to hear from someone with that many users, a global consumer base of customers leveraging the platform. So it's awesome, and I look forward to keeping track of what you all do and what you all build.
Yeah, I hope to speak, about very different things, let's say in a year or something.
Yeah, I'm sure this
we have an
change.
opportunity to look back and be like, oh, that was so naive, or oh, that was such a great insight, right?
Yeah, the space is moving so fast, so I have no doubt a year from now the conversation will look a lot different in a lot of different ways, for sure.
Yeah,
awesome.
Well, that's
thank
been
you
a
so
pleasure.
much for joining me again, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Take care.
Have a good one.